warm welcome, Your Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen, friends, partners, colleagues, everyone. Welcome to the British Library, where I have the great pleasure of being Chief Executive, and welcome to a little bit of London that is forever Jaipur.
There is a sense of intense homecoming as we return, even though virtually, to JLF in London. It's been a huge privilege to partner with the British Library, and this collaboration has been so full of joy and learning.
It's a particular pleasure for me to come back to the British Library, which has been my office in London for many years, and where my books have all been written and researched, and it's very nice to see this end of my life sort of double back on it.
Our amazing writers, today more than any time, because of the way the digital age has taken over, we need you to be able to make sense of the past, divine the future, and perhaps set in context what we're going through at this very point of time.
This is the first time I've been to it in London. I've been to the one in Rajasthan before, and it's fantastic. It's got a different vibe here, but it's equally wonderful here.
JLF brings this amazing festival to London. It's a wonderful get-together of writers and thinkers, and you know, I only go to one festival, literature festival in the world, and it's this one.
The people who've been here, both bookshop customers, the authors and the organisers, have been an absolute delight to work with. I can honestly say as well that this is the best dressed, most elegantly dressed crowd at any literary festival I've ever seen anywhere.
It's maintained the standards which I'm accustomed to in Jaipur itself, and I'm extremely happy to be part of it here.
I love this festival. I think it's a privilege for me.
JLF deserves enormous congratulation for the way that it puts its program together here. I think that all of the events are superbly chaired. I think that the setting here in the British Library is just a fantastic environment.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our festival co-directors, Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple, festival producer Teamwork Arts and the British Library, we welcome you to this session of JLF London at the British Library Virtual Festival, presented in partnership with the Aga Khan Foundation and our patron, the Murthy Family Foundation. Our magazine partner for this series is The Week, Journalism with a Human Touch. Our next session is The Mathematics of Stardom, Shakuntala Devi. Nayanika Mehtani and Vidya Balan in conversation with Vani Tripathi Tikku. A behind-the-scenes look at the extraordinary biopic on the life of the mathematical genius, the late Srimati Shakuntala Devi. Vidya Balan is one of the most known, loved and respected actors in Bollywood today. The recipient of several awards, including the National Film Award, 6 Filmfare Awards, 6 Screen Awards and several others. She is one of the few actresses to have been able to garner both critical and commercial success for films like The Dirty Picture, Pa, Ishqiya and Kahani. Nayanika Mehtani once harbored dreams of becoming a stage actor, but followed the proverbial left side of her brain to pursue an MBA degree at IIM Bangalore and became an investment banker. In a slight change of career, she is now an award-winning author and screenwriter. Her latest young adult novel, Across the Line, is rooted in the partition of the subcontinent. Vani Tripathi Tikku is the youngest ever member of the Central Board of Film Certification. Her campaigns and outreach programs have focused on encouraging women's participation in politics as well as issues revolving around education, empowerment, and employment. Tikku has also worked in theatre, film, and television. All our sessions are available to view on london.jlflitfest.org. They will be available to view on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest, and on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. Do follow our handles, JLF Litfest on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get notified on the upcoming sessions. In case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you can log back on london.jlflitfest.org or find us on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Please do comment by typing in the comment section. We thank Launchora, our podcast partner, for this session. Please do consider donating to help make possible JLF London at the British Library, which is free to view by clicking on the donation link. It will help us enormously in these difficult times. Ladies and gentlemen, the mathematics of stardom, Shakuntala Devi, Nainika Mehtani, and Vidya Balan in conversation with Vani Tripathi Tikku. Over to you, Vani.
Thank you, Ankur. Welcome. A big round of applause to Vidya Balan, my dear friend and sister in trouble. Why should it always be brothers in trouble? We both sit on the populist, sometimes unpopular body called the Central Board of Film Certification, the Censor Board. And I think me and Vidya go back decades. Welcome, Vidya.
Thank you.
Welcome, Nainika. Welcome, Nainika. It's been a fantastic journey from Bhutan, where we met last at a list fest like this, to now. Lovely to have you both. So, Vidya Kasam, let me start by saying Shakuntala Devi was an absolute stunner. And congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
What a gorgeous film, really. I mean, Vidya, we've seen biopics and we've seen biopics and we've seen biopics. I mean, for the past few years, it's been a trend where we do see women and men from all walks of life being spoken about in cinema. But I think Shakuntala Devi went beyond being a biopic. It was an extremely touching film. You, as usual, surpassed everything that you do as an actor on screen.
Thank you.
Tell us about this journey to make the human computer celluloid friendly. And what was it like for you to play this mathematical genius the whole world was so enamored with?
You know, all I knew about Shakuntala Devi when Anu Menon first came to me is that, you know, she's known as a human computer the world over and she's in the Guinness Book of World Records. But when Anu began to share with me her life story, I was fascinated and her take on it. You know, one, she wanted to tell Shakuntala's story through the eyes of her daughter Anu Banerjee, but also the fact that you could see this person as a human being. It was not just a puff piece where you were glorifying her. You know, of course, we wanted to celebrate her, but we wanted to celebrate her in her wholesomeness, in the fact that she embraced her flaws. She was unapologetically herself. She owned her choices. She lived her life. Should I say queen size? You know, I love that. I love that. And I was like, wow, you know, because I've been offered many biopics since The Dirty Picture. But my problem has always been that they're all very unidimensional. But I think also Shakuntala Devi allowed for a certain, you know, a telling which was very layered, which was very nuanced, which I just think it was so different. And, you know, hats off to Nainika and Anu for the kind of research they put in. I think Nainika will tell you more, but they put in years researching Shakuntala Devi, sitting with Anupama Banerjee and Ajay, and just, you know, knowing a little more about her every time, so it could be such a full body piece. And I said, wow, this is something I want to do.
And how fantastically done. I remember Maya Angelou very famously said, success is liking yourself, how you do it, and what you do with it. And I think Shakuntala Devi lived all of these three, parallels of enjoying success so much. But before I come to Nainika, within the fault lines of this relationship between the mother and the daughter Vidya, it could have been that the mother could have been the villain of the piece, but she wasn't. And also with the way you and Sanya played it. So tell us a little more these judgments that we live with each day of mothers wanting to work. Is it always a difficult choice? I have a 2.5-year-old now, and I know what it means with so many multifarious led kind of relationships and workplace, situations that we have faced with. We always judged. Is she a mother? Can she work? Will she work? Will the working part work if you are a mother? I mean, all this was it playing in your head? What was happening when you were bonding together, also as characters and actors, to play the mother and the daughter?
So these were conversations we would have on set, and I think one as working mothers, and then just as mothers, as wives, as daughters, as women, I think we're always guilt-ridden. We take on much more than a human being can possibly and should possibly take on, because I think we expect ourselves to be goddesses, but we don't treat ourselves like that. I think it's so, it always amazes me that even to this day, as women, we find it difficult to think for ourselves, to make choices that could come across as selfish, which is why I think Shakuntala Devi was amazing, because she didn't judge herself. That's the first thing we do as women. Forget what society puts you through. We are so unkind and unfair to ourselves. And, Sanya and I and Anu, we would have these conversations all the time. I remember there was a time during the filming, I'm going to take the liberty to share this. Anu Mellon lives in London actually, and she has a daughter who's just entering her teens, and she wanted to so badly be at home with her daughter through this crucial time, and yet she was in Bombay, filming, and there was this constant tug of war. And then we would do a scene and Anu would come and say, actually it's okay that I'm making the film. No, I suddenly it's fine. So we would have these conversations all the time. I know my sister is a working woman, and she's executive director at an ad agency, doing very well for herself. But she actually passed on a huge promotion because she felt she might not be able to be there for her kids as much if she took on that role. So I think we're all doing this all the time. And look at Shakuntala Devi. She wanted it all. She went ahead and got it all on her own terms. And I think I can go on and on and on. And Ananika is not going to get a chance to.
No, I'm coming to Ananika. But this one line, one of the characters says, I think it's Shakuntala Devi's, the daughter's mother-in-law, you'll never be a perfect mother. Yeah. If you're too kind and too loving, then you will be spoiling the child. And if you're not, yet the child would get spoiled. So I think the perfect definition of being a perfect mother is a work in progress. It's been centuries and it still would remain as work in progress. Nainika, congratulations. The film was happy. It was touching. It touched our emotions in so many ways. And it spoke to us, people who only knew Shakuntala Devi as a human computer. These relationships, her emotional self, her crazy, also controlling this of having a bad childhood, and parents who were using her, to have the household fed. And yet, her own situation of not letting the child go, not letting the daughter go. You have said somewhere that stories speak to you when they find you. And Shakuntala Devi visited your school when you were little. So was it in your head all these years, all these decades that you will one day write this biopic? or it was a story that spoke to you in some ways which was different from, say, a writer picking up a book and writing a biopic, you know?
So, I mean, I cannot say that, I thought I would write this story since the time I was 6. I think it's an unconscious process. And I definitely didn't think that Vidya would helm this film one day. That was like surreal entirely. But yes, she came to my little school in Kolkata when I was 6 years old. And, more than the numbers and this being like a magician pulling numbers out of a hat, she was a show person. And I think that's what stayed with me. I still remember, the swish of that silk sari as she walked onto the stage, making fun of the maths teacher, telling our head teacher, who was this little lady called Miss Higgins, telling her off that, your maths is not up to the mark. I mean, she was unforgettable. So somewhere at the back of my mind, I think that show stayed with me. And when I finally became an author in my 40s and I wanted to, tell stories. So 2015, my first book happened. And then my editor said, what should we write about? And I was thinking of stories. And of course, there was this story about, this story where the hero is an Indian woman born in the 1920s whose superpower is mathematics. And who is unschooled, but she goes on to conquer the world and inspire millions of people. And she's grown up in sad circumstances, but she's never played the victim, as Vidya says. But like you said, Vani, I really believe stories choose us. So this story chose its time. It chose its tellers. And I was so fortunate that my friend Anu Menon, who directed the movie, she wanted to do a film on Shakuntala. She was so excited about doing a film where the female protagonist, the way it's portrayed is different from what we've seen before. And as it happened, Shakuntala Devi, of course, by then had passed away. She passed away in 2013, but her daughter happened to be in London as well. And she was also looking to tell her mother's story.
Did you meet the daughter? Sorry, I'm butting in because I was very curious to know. Through the journey of the film, the daughter is very clear about not liking mathematics and having an issue with the persona of the mother, which one understands. I mean, if you turn the camera from her point of view, there is absolutely another tale to be told, and that's the gorgeous tale you all actually told the world. It wasn't just about the successes and the drama and the fantabulous, life of Shakuntala Devi. It was about the fault lines of those relationships and her marriage and, her travails to various countries, which the daughter absolutely despised. Because there is this one line, and I'm again and again going back to the dialogues because they are so clear in my head with the way you guys even wrote it. She said, every day is not a home, it's a hotel in Cape Town or in London or in X or Y, which means how much children require that space which is called home. And however successful you may be, coming back to that center and that apostle of responsibility, which is the home and the family, was so important for her. Did you meet her? What was her reaction when she got to know that you're writing this and you guys are making it? Tell us a little more about it.
So we met her for the first time in 2016, Vani. It was, that meeting, she didn't speak very much. It was her husband who spoke more. She had lost her mother. There wasn't closure. There was a lot of unfinished stuff in her head. There was grief, there was pain, there was hurt, there was resentment. And what really drew me in, not only as a storyteller, but, as a daughter and a mother, was that she had the honesty to finally share, and it took her time. That's why it took a few years before we finally arrived at where we did. But when she shared the story, it was without airbrushing, either her mother's flaws or her own. She was telling it with an honesty that really resonated. And, for me, the emotional core of the story was the realization that your mother is not just a mother. She also has her own dreams and her own baggage and her own journey. And that may be very different from yours. Like Anu Banerjee and Shakuntala were very different people. But at the heart of it,
they shared this stubborn strand of DNA, which was the honesty and the courage to own their choices. And I think even though she resented her mother and all of that, she wanted to tell this story with honesty. That was her tribute to her mother. If she had whitewashed this story, there was no way we would have known otherwise. And we still would have had a lovely story. It would have been Vidya playing this child to champion arc. And I'm sure people would have loved it. But the stories that really stay with us, stay with me, are the stories that just kick you in the gut and make you feel, that's when we felt we'd found the beating
tone, the right tone,
the tone of this story. And I know, we've received feedback that, it's become this mother-daughter thing. But Anu, Menon and I, we just felt this is the story that is speaking to us. This is the story we want to tell, because as you both probably know much better than me, what we've seen in Indian cinema, the Hindi, the mother has been always placed on a pedestal. And there's this burden of being this paragon of protection. And she's not allowed to step off. Hindi cinema has perpetuated this societal expectation. Ye to maa hai. She, this maa ka dusra naam sacrifice hai. So, Ishita, who's done our dialogues, all the dialogues that you're appreciating, she brought that in. And especially when the dialogues came in, it just became beautiful.
So please congratulate. Yeah, Vidya.
Sorry, I love that line which says, "माँ को भगवान का नहीं, भगवान को माँ का दर्जा
दिया जाता है." Really, no, but I must also congratulate all of you all for an all-woman crew. Thumbs up to that. When I did my first film way back in '98 with Tanuja Chandra and Pooja Bhatt, we almost wanted an all-woman crew, and you knew that, Vidya, way back. You and I go back to those years too.
Yeah, of course.
There were very few women technicians. There were very few women writers, very few editors and cinematographers who were women. So here is another round of applause for, this is great messaging.
Thank you. Also, of course, it was a women-heavy crew. It wasn't an all-women crew. But yes, most of heads of department were women.
Fantastic. I think...
if I can say something, I think the amount of sunshine and goodness and positivity Vidya brings onto the set, whether it's women, men, whoever's on the crew, it just kind of becomes this... There's a different energy level. And
Menika, Vidya Kasam, you're absolutely right about it. I love the Vidya Kasam. You know why I'm so hooked on to the Vidya Kasam? My little baby, she's already into books, and she will do all kinds of things. And each time she has a foot on a book, I say, "Ye Vidya hai. Iska adar karna hai, sar pe chhuo." And the moment I heard Vidya Kasam, I was like, wow, this is something that I was taught, and when my parents and my father was an academic and all. But Vidya, let me come to you now with something which is like a traveling tale with me. All over the world, when I go and speak on women in cinema, and I do a lot of those things, you always pop up in all my conversations. And you always pop up because you've actually kicked open a door. You've cracked the glass ceiling in the Indian film industry, and I'm going to say this very aggressively today. That dirty picture was the change of that narrative, which was the propaganda done against women characterizations in Indian cinema for decades. The propaganda used to be, if it's a woman protagonist film, it will not work, it will not get finance, and nobody's going to watch it. Dude, you broke it all. You just broke open that door, and you created history by doing a film which was a biopic on a star who was seen in a certain light. And, when you talk about that character, you see how much of trauma, how much of misery, and how much of, trouble she went through, and the way you portrayed it. So, Vidya, for being the champion of this new narrative which is emerged in Indian cinema. And I always say this, post Dirty Picture, you see hundreds of films which have been a plethora of this change. Tell us a little about this change. Tell us what was happening when you were doing that film.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I think I'm going to develop a bloated head by the end of this. But, I think it's a matter of timing. I can't take the credit for it single-handedly because, there was an Ekta Kapoor producing the film. And that's very important because maybe another producer wouldn't have had the gumption to do it, but Ekta has always been, she's always played on the front foot, and I think she was like, I want to tell the story. And I think initially when people saw the trailer or the teaser, a lot of people said, oh my God, what have you done? Because they kept saying, oh, it's all about sex. And I said, I don't care if the sex is what brings you into the theater. Because you'll see beyond that, you'll see the person beneath that body or within that body once you step into the theater. And I'm so glad that's what happened, because when people came out, they didn't come out dissing her or, saying unparliamentary things about her. They were, I think it was so nice that they got to see her as a person with her vulnerabilities, someone who was trying hard to make a mark, and she used the only tool she thought she had at her disposal, which was the body. And it was, I remember, even when it got announced and people, people read about it, I remember a couple of people called me and said, listen, you're the girl next door, you can't do something like this. And I was like, no, the actor in me was jumping at the opportunity. I think I'm so grateful that that film happened. Even I wasn't aware. I was just responding to it as an actor. I didn't think, oh, is it going to do well commercially? Is it not? And, a lot of people told me that it might sound a death knell on your career because, it's too drastic a step for someone like you. But I'm just glad, I went ahead with my conviction, and that film changed something.
It did. It did.
And still, Vani, I want to say this, that after the Dirty Picture, people said it did crazy business, opening day of 10 crores. And people said, well, usme to sex thi na. Sex tha na. But then Kahani happened right after that. And Kahani didn't open great because it didn't have the flamboyance. But Kahani also went on to do crazy numbers. And that's what cemented something, this new wave. You felt like, oh, it was not just, there is hope. That movement, towards female-led stories began to happen with the Dirty Picture.
It did. That's why I'm saying you pop up, the film pops up. But look at your choice of roles. Look at Tumhari Sulu. I mean, I was just revisiting the film again, with the whole family, with my in-laws. We are all in these, of course, we are all locked down in this dystopian time. And one is trying to watch as many films as you can, also together with, your relatives and your friends and your family and so on. And again, a housewife who becomes a radio jockey at night, and you had so much fun doing that role. One can just see that tremendous enjoyment in you as Sulu. And these are the choices, Vidya, which you have made, which are path-breaking as far as Indian cinema is concerned. Tell us a little about playing that housewife who actually has a schizoid personality and comes alive as somebody else, on radio with that voice. Hello.
Yeah, it's the same thing, Vani. No one is unidimensional, right? But we tend to put people in categories, tend to box them in categories. Oh, if she's a housewife, she has to be a Miss Goody Two Shoes. She must be very staid. She must be very seedhi sadhi. But she was a masti khor. She like when she gets a job the first time, she teases her kirane wala on the phone.
Yes.
It's also Suresh Trivedi's writing and direction. Yeah. But it was, you don't associate these two things, right? A middle-class housewife who suddenly lands a job as a late-night RJ, who's cooing into the phone and almost making the other person feel like it's an intimate conversation just between the two of them. I enjoyed it. I had a blast because it was breaking so many, notions, preconceived notions or stereotypes that we have in our heads. For example, at that time, I was, for many years in between, I was going through lots of hormonal issues, and I kept gaining weight on a daily basis. And for me to feel sexy in that body, while I was saying all that, I kept wondering, I said, oh, but am I going to be convincing? And I realized it had nothing to do with the body.
Absolutely not. And that is where the objectification part, remember, you and I speak so much sitting in that body that we do, that how we have to overcorrect when we look at women and, the way they are objectified each day. It's not the body, and imagine it's the voice which brings everything alive, And I mean, gorgeous choice, of roles, Vidya. And Nanika, quickly I come to you because I have about just 10 minutes before the audience will unleash themselves on us. And fairly, they should. Nanika, you from an investment banker, you started writing for children. One thing I always wondered about is that how much writing is happening for children, how many films are made for children is something which bothers me. During my own work with children at Tibetan Education and National School of Drama, it was a very important centerpiece of my own work as an actor before I started doing films. What was the investment banker thinking in her head when she started writing for films and started writing for children? And somewhere in Shakuntala Devi, also Vidya, this is for you, the abandonment of Shakuntala Devi. That absolute curiosity in her eyes is something which was so beautiful to look at. So tell us a little about this writing for children and this new book that you've just done. I just finished reading it. It's a absolute thumbs up.
Thank you so much, Vani. So I think these decisions are not taken from your head. They come from the heart. And again, that's why I keep saying any sane person would never do this. Leave an investment banking job to start writing. And that
are we not all insane? We are all insane in so many ways, are we not?
You have to have some sort of kira, something that comes into you, and you just do it. You follow your heart. And I call it my riches to rags story. But basically I wanted to write for children because my daughters were growing up, and I wanted to tell them stories which were rooted in their reality. They were growing up in the UK, and I didn't feel that they knew enough about the stories I had heard, and I wanted to tell them stories which I felt would be interesting. But you're absolutely right. It is very hard getting funding for anything to do with children to make it into a film for children. I would love to. And in fact, for Across the Line as well, there's been a lot of interest. Let's see where that goes. But it's been absolutely wonderful telling that story. It was very interesting because even in Across the Line, it was an unfinished conversation with my grandfather. That sort of was the seed for the story. And just like I hadn't had closure, and I was writing this and Shakuntala at the same time. And there was some sort of resonance because I think Anu didn't have closure with many things with her mum. I hadn't found closure in many things with my grandfather. I felt I hadn't been there enough. I hadn't asked him about this really huge cataclysmic event in his life, the partition, and, leaving everything and just starting life afresh. But I had never ever bothered. I felt almost like heartless at never having asked them, how was it? What did you go through? And it's not just him, it was a generation of people who just took that grief and had nowhere to put it. So I just felt that, they erased their past and built our future, and they didn't find anyone who even said thank you or how are you, or so this was my attempted tribute to that generation of what I call quiet heroes.
But kudos for this, because partition is one of the last things we tell our children about. I also understand the pain and the trauma of another generation. We are children who are born post-independence many years later. So probably our generation does not know the trauma and the pain and the misery that, partition brought in its wake. But I think retelling of the narratives is what I think the time is today, within the binaries of the kind of times we are in, where we can't go out. And one of the things, Vidya, that I wondered about, Shakuntala Devi came on an OTT platform.
Yeah.
And also, these are the times that we live in. We don't know when the next film will release in the theaters. At
Yeah.
CBFC, we have not certified the film in so many
Yeah.
months now. So, do you think that there's a new narrative emerging with storytelling in cinema, which is now consciously being made not for just the 75 but for that content which is in our palms? Is there a change there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this started a few years ago, but obviously, courtesy the pandemic, this OTT platform has definitely cemented its position, I think, because people have been consuming content in their homes, on their television screens, or on their phones. And I think what this does is it makes the entire process more expansive and inclusive, because there were certain kinds of stories that you couldn't tell on the big screen.
Yes.
So now you can choose to make that purely for the OTT. So, you don't have to, do away with that story or not tell it because you can't tell it on 70 You still have the option of making that and reaching your story to people. I think it's also this, the fact we've almost become medium agnostic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is the new normal. That is the new normal, and you're right. It's democratization of content. And I have a barrage of questions. I'm quickly going to get into it. Shweta Srivastav asks you, in Shakuntala Devi, you play a character described as a human computer. How do you approach portraying characters with such incredible abilities? And what's the greatest challenge you face to bringing Shakuntala Devi to life on the screen?
Hi Shweta, actually thank God for small mercies that I didn't have to become a human computer myself, because then we couldn't make the film. I was given
you look very credible. You look very credible, Vidya, doing it though.
No, thank God. And we had Nainika on set, who is actually, I think, some sort of a Vedic maths expert. She would no, but she would be helping us on set with, with the kind of equations we used in the film and all that. I just had to learn up the answers. And thankfully, I have a thing for numbers, so that came pretty easily to me. Yeah, but I think with playing Shakuntala Devi, my biggest challenge was the math shows itself. Because, unfortunately, we all associate maths with being slightly boring, and therefore anyone who does maths as being straight-jacketed and maybe even reticent, not interesting and all of that. So, but she broke that with her shows. The way the role was written, because of course based on their research, and also after I watched the videos, I realized that she had a certain flair. She did, her math shows were more like magic shows.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was. And one of the questions relates exactly to this, connected to, Riya Sharma asked that how did you make her emotionally relatable so that the audience relates to her emotionally and sees her not just as just a brilliant, intelligent character, but also as a person?
That's really in the way it's written. I can't take credit for that, because it was all there. I just had to chew into it. Here was a person who was, of course, a mathematical genius, but there was a beating heart in there. She felt very passionately about her daughter. She loved the man she loved. She also felt very passionately about her parents, which is why she carried that kind of anger towards them. So, you saw her when I read, which is what I was saying, when I read the material, I'm saying, not the script, the first time Anu Menon came to me, because she just had a sheet of paper and she shared a lot with me. I realized that, here's a human being. I myself had wondered about people like her. When you encounter a genius, you wonder whether, do they eat food the way we do? Do they have cravings? Do they have, and I was so thrilled to know that she loved her food, she loved her wine, she loved dancing. Apparently, she would tap out the rhythm. She loved tap dancing because she would tap out the rhythm. Things like this make her so human, other than the emotional roller coaster that you see in the film. So I think I didn't have to do anything. It was all there.
Can I just say something? She's been very gracious. I'm telling you, I had goosebumps on set. We would not see Vidya. Suddenly, from the Vidya who's doing the banter on set, the cameras would roll. I literally had goosebumps, and I had watched quite a few videos over the years. I had seen her in person. I would see Vidya as Shakuntala Devi. Honestly, so there is.
We actually saw her in many avatars, and this avatar was also very much Vidya. Nainika, there's a very interesting question for you from Kiara. Why did you pursue your dream of becoming an actor?
Oh, I wasn't good enough by any stretch of the imagination. I wanted to work in musical theatre. So like you, Vani, I was with Theatre Action Group.
Yes,
Shahrukh was the one who would give us cues for improvs. Shankar Ehsan, Loy Mendonca was a guitar teacher at that time. And I remember that he used to do the music for us. It was a beautiful world that I thought I would want to be a part of. But I think behind the scenes as a storyteller is where I fitted. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I finally got in life to come back to it. And
there's one more trick question for you, and I think Danika, knowing you, you'll answer it honestly. Is there anything you left out of the film screenplay that you wish should have been included?
So, because it's 2 hours, there's a lot in Shakuntala's life that we could have given you another movie as well. If but in 2 hours, I think we picked up the heart of the movie. What we wanted to say, we did say.
Good. That question, by the way, was from Agastya for you. Vidya, there's one more very interesting question. That many of Shakuntala's challenges in her story stem from her talent and success, which cause conflict in her personal relationships, which we just spoke about. Why do you believe she faced such trials and tribulations? Do you think there's a personal balance? Sachin Nagar is also asking, do you personally balance the two? Workspace and also family and relationships around you?
No, I don't. And I don't even try to, because when I'm at work, unless I completely immerse myself in what I do, I feel it's pointless. I don't enjoy myself then. So I don't try and, everyone asks me, what is your work-life balance? Work is my life. And outside of work, yes, there is a life. And I enjoy that and fully, I'm present in wherever I am at that particular point of time, but I don't try and balance it. I think with Shakuntala Devi, as with every other woman,
yes,
it is that you expect her to put everyone else before her. We've all been brought up to believe that you should be the last priority in your life, if at all. But because she didn't play by the rules, she didn't follow the norms, she put herself first. I think there was that much more judgment even on the part of her daughter, who was looking at the mothers around her and wondering, while it almost seemed like her friends' mothers treated her friends like they were the apple of their existence, but not for her mother. It wasn't true. But because we tend to I think we judge women very harshly. We judge ourselves very harshly also.
We do, and there's a circle and a cycle of guilt which constantly keeps evolving around us. And we are given that guilt, and coming to judgments, Vidya, another very interesting question, and I think it's an important question to understand, because I always say that you crop up in these narratives of the changing role of women and characterization in Indian cinema, and I call it Indian cinema, not Bollywood. Underline. How has the woman's place in Bollywood impacted you, and has it evolved since your debut? And Eric is also asking, is there a role of films in inciting social change?
Do films play a role in effecting social change?
Yes, and how are the women placed in Bollywood? I call it Indian film industry. Has that impacted you, and has it changed since you made your debut many years ago?
I remember when I, first entered films. Of course, Parinita was an author-backed role, and I was playing Parinita. But besides that, in the subsequent films that I did for, in the next 2-3 years, I think I always felt like even if you took me out of a film, the film would go on. The story could have been told without me. It almost seemed like the girl or the woman's character didn't really have an identity which was integral to the story. And that has definitely changed. That has changed, and therefore then off camera also things have changed. Both goes, hand in hand. And I'm very glad to be in cinema at a time when that change is actually playing itself out. I think women, to all the female actors who come before us, who, sometimes played by the rules, sometimes broken the rules, sometimes broken the glass ceiling. But I think they're all responsible for where we are today. And as far as cinema affecting social change goes, I definitely think that it's a very peripheral role. We definitely credit cinema, far more than, I think the primary role of cinema is to entertain, and along with that, if you're able to take back a message or think about something, it leaves you with a thought, that's great. But I think, when to put the onus on cinema for social change is quite
daunting. It's a daunting task.
Yeah,
it's daunting.
It's a tall order, I don't think it works like that at all, because actually cinema is a reflection of reality. And but I don't think it's the other way around.
Well, I must say that the times that we are in, we never envisaged in our lifetimes we will have these 6 months of almost looking like a long dystopian film which is refusing to end, and as if we are all characters in it. But before I ask you for your closing remarks, Nainika, just one thing which connects to the OTT platform bit, and maybe you wrote a film for the big screen. There's a question also there from Agastya. Will screenplay writing change if films are now being written for the medium called over the top and not really only for theatrical releases? Or for you, it doesn't matter, the medium is inconsequential. You want to tell stories and you will tell the way they need to be told.
So I'm just one film old, so for whatever it's worth, I'm giving my opinion. But I think, we might have told a quieter story if we knew we were pitching it for OTT to start with. We finished shooting and then we found out the coronavirus. It was intended for a cinematic release. So even the songs and everything else, then you're pitching it for viewership in either in a dark room with 200 other people, where you're consuming entertainment a little differently to how you would consume it if you're sitting in your drawing room with just your family. So even the things you laugh at and the way it's pitched and the tone, it does differ slightly. So you write it in that way. But I think it's just lovely, as Vidya said, and as we all, appreciating the fact that we have these many channels, and all of us can probably, write what we know best, and hopefully it'll find an audience.
So Vidya, finally, this really beautiful long journey, which will be very, very long. We know that you've taken. Obviously, you always ask this question, which is that one character that you like the most playing and so on. I'm not going to put you in that predicament, though there is an audience question there about that. But what I really want to know finally is the future of entertainment going to change with women being the centerpiece of our stories now? Is it going to impact the way we tell our stories, the way we consume content around us? And will women also become as important as they ought to be within the narratives of the films, the stories, and the kathavachaks that we are the stories that we will tell further on as a futuristic investment?
I think so. Cinema is constantly changing and evolving and reflecting the changes in society. So, in the world around us, women are, women are the most important. How do I say this? They are taking center stage in their own lives. They have their own dreams and hopes and aspirations and fears and insecurities. So, the more that happens, the more you're going to see reflection of that on screen. So it's definitely going to change. What's also changing is the fact that we have lots of women telling stories behind the scenes. So definitely it's that also changes a lot, because a woman's perspective is like Anu Menon is the first female director I worked with. And and what I loved, Vani, is that here we were telling a woman's story through the eyes of another woman, told by a third woman. That's Anupama Banerjee telling the story of Shakuntala Devi, and the person telling it all is Anu Menon. I think it's so fantastic. It's a different. It is a film that's very different from the way a man would have seen it. Obviously, and in the past few years, of course, we've had a few women's stories, but we need a lot more women's stories, and we need a lot more women telling them, and that is underway. So that is definitely going to change the content we're consuming.
Nanika, you think there's a change coming? There's a change coming as far as these narratives are concerned, and women being the centerpiece of these stories?
Absolutely hope so. Fingers crossed.
So thank you so much, guys. I'm completely out of time. I could have gone on and on and on and spoken to Vidya and Nanika about their future projects. But one thing I'm going to say, Nietzsche said that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So hope this pandemic makes us stronger, makes us think, make us internalize. Stay safe. Vidya, you're back to work and you were on a shoot today. We know that. So that's celebration time that the industry is now limping back on its feet and started to work again. More power to you both, and fingers crossed for some great narratives that we are going to see. Thank you guys, and thank you for joining.
And this was an absolutely enjoyable session for both of us, because it's the first time, I'm saying both of us, I hope it was for you, Nanika, but it's the first time we've done an interview together.
I know, it's so special. Thank you so much. Unforgettable.
So thank you, and all the best to both of you.
Thank you, Vani. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nanika. Bye.
Thank you, Vidya, Vani, and Nanika, for this fabulous, fabulous session. Thank you so much. And thank you for all watching and being such a great audience. By the way, hope everyone who hasn't caught the film as yet will do so soon. We thank all our partners, the Aga Khan Foundation UK, and our patron, the Murthy Family Foundation, for supporting the festival. We hope that you will join us tomorrow and the day after on JLF London at the British Library to watch and be part of these fantastic sessions that we have programmed for you. Tomorrow, we will begin with Iron Wall, Israel and the Arab World. Avish Laim and Raja Shehade in conversation with Chris Doyle. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 11:30 a.m. British Standard Time. Thank you.
Teamwork Arts takes India's artistic diversity to the world across continents, traversing from Australia, Canada, China, Egypt, Germany, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Africa, Russia, South Korea, Sweden, UK and the USA in its stunning array of 16 international festivals in over 40 cities. A feast for the senses, these are spectacles of dance, music, cinema, theatre, literature and so much more. Teamwork Arts, celebrating the arts. For more information, visit teamworkarts.com or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.